Hey, what's happening everybody? Paul here with Living Off Grid. In today's video, this is going to be a talking video, so heads up to those who don't like my talking to the camera videos. You guys might want to click off of this one and wait for the next one to come on out. But what I've been receiving is some comments and a lot of DMs from people who are in the prepping stage before they take off to their land and start off on their off-grid adventure and experience. And I have people DMing me to go over their prep list to make sure that they have everything in order that they need, that they're not missing anything, so that when they get to their land and they get their base camp set up and all that, you know, they're like 100% ready and prepared for the adventure. So what I want to do in this video is share with you my 7 most important prepping tips or principles for before you get to your campsite. I feel like I'm in a good position to help some people out on this because, you know, I've been here for 2 months now. Got my base camp set up. I'm living in my base camp, and sometimes I know in other things that I've done, you know, when you're way far down in your path, you know, you're years beyond this point, and you try to reflect back on how it was, you know, sometimes you miss certain details or you've kind of forgotten about certain things. So I figured right now is a good time because right now I've got my systems for the most part pretty dialed in. But again, I've been living off grid in my tent back here for 2 months, going into my 3rd month. I figure right now is a great time. It's fresh in my mind, it's fresh in my body and in my soul, experiencing this point in my living off-grid experience. So I want to share these tips with you. Be sure to stick around to the end of this video because I have an 8th bonus tip that I believe is the absolute most important one. So, all right, got my lemon water. Got to stay hydrated while you're making these videos. All right, so tip number 1 is shelter. What are you going to do for shelter? You want to make sure you have that thought out. How much room do you need? How much space do you need? Behind me is my Bell tent by Stout Tent. It doesn't matter what type of structure you have. It could be any kind of tent. It could be a Bell tent. It could be a wall tent. It could be a regular camping tent. One of the things you want to take in consideration with all these tips is what's the environment that you're in? How cold, how hot, how dry, how wet, how windy, how, you know, just all these different, you know, elements that happen within that environment. So behind me, I'm using a Bell tent. It was within my price range. I did a lot of research on different style tents. I thought about doing a wall tent, but I liked this because I knew that this is going to be a temporary setup for me, and I could pack this thing up really quick. I can reset it up really quick anywhere on the property, or anytime I want to leave the property and maybe I want to do a longer camping excursion somewhere else, then I could just bring this bad boy with me, and it's very, very easy for me to take down and set back up. Very, very easy. So you want to consider how much space do you need for your temporary shelter or for your base camp. You know, are you going on this journey by yourself? Is it you and maybe a significant other, a partner? Is it you and a family? Maybe you've got kids that are with you. So really think about what amount of space, kind of square footage, do you need for your particular situation. All right, starters, living off-grid prep tip number 2 is sleep systems. This one is super, super important. And I would have to say that I did not give this one enough thought before I actually physically got here that I should have. And a good night's sleep makes all the difference on how you physically and mentally perform day in and day out. So when I first started, you know, I had a cot just like this one. I got a couple cots. And this is what I started on. But I did not prepare for my first night. I moved to the property the same day that I closed on the property. So I was at my attorney's office, I closed on the property, and I drove all the way over here, and you can see it in episode 1 where I'm setting up the tent. That was the moment that I got on the property. And that night got down to about the low to mid 20s. It was about 23, 24 degrees, and I was not prepared for it. I did not have the time to get my wood burning stove set up, and the coldest sleeping bag I had was a 30-degree sleeping bag, and I can tell you it was a rough night. But I was determined, and I got through it, and I could tell you the very next morning, the nearest Walmart to me opened at 6 o'clock in the morning, and I was on my way there by 5:30 in the morning. I made sure, like, I got in my car, I was warm, and I got a colder sleeping bag, and I got my sleeping system set up right. And I got my wood burning stove set up immediately that day. So really think about your sleep systems. Think about the type of conditions that you're going to be in. Is it going to be really cold? Do you have a sleeping bag or blankets, clothing, layers that can keep you warm enough? Or vice versa, is it hot? And do you have a sleeping system that can keep you cooler during those hot nights, those warm nights? Again, these tips are more tactical and principle based than technical based, because I don't know where you are, and I may have never experienced the conditions that you're planning to be in. So for me, the cot, I don't mind camping on a cot for a few nights, but this just did not do it for me. It was not comfortable enough for me for long term. So I ended up going to a store that was closing, and they had mattresses in a box that were like 50% off, and I picked one of those up, and I can tell you it made a world of difference. I've got my wood burning stove, I've got my sleeping bags, my blankets, my layers whenever I need to stay warm on those colder nights. So sleep systems, don't underthink this one. Make sure you really plan this one out. Give it enough thought, maybe more than enough thought. Okay, prepping tip number 3 for your living off-grid base camp starter kit is a warming source. So this one kind of goes hand in hand with the first two, your shelter and your sleep system. But you really want to think about, how are you going to stay warm, not just at night, but even during the day when it's really cold out or cool outside. So behind me, you're going to see my stovepipe sticking up out of my tent, and I chose a wood burning stove, and it gets nice and toasty inside my tent. Like, it gets like 80 degrees, 90 degrees. When it's really cold out here, 20s, 30s, I could be inside my tent in shorts and a tank top. But some people may not want to use a wood burning stove. Maybe some people want to use some like portable propane heaters. So think about what kind of resources are going to be on your property, and also what are you comfortable with. So here, my property of almost 50 acres, I'm completely surrounded by trees. I've got a good mixture of pines and hardwoods like birch, elm, sweet gum, beech. So for me, a wood burning stove just made a lot of sense, since I already have an abundance of this natural resource of wood already here on the property. Now, along with a heat source, you also want to think of cooling if the environment that you are in is hot. Now, I'm one of those rare kind of weirdo people that really like it hot and humid, like unbelievably hot and humid. I love 100 degrees with full blast on humidity. That's how it would get when I lived in Southern Illinois. People don't realize how hot and humid it gets in Southern Illinois when you're just kind of inside, landlocked in the Shawnee National Forest. And those nights would be, in the mid 80s, and I've got the window open, and the sheets are all off of my bed and no AC, and I sleep like a baby. I love it. Hot, humid, stuffy, muggy. I don't know. I'm just one of those rare weirdos in the world. So heat source, don't skip that one. I'll put some links below this video in the description to what I'm using. And I'm not sponsored by my tent company. I'm not sponsored by my wood burning stove company. I don't get any kickback or anything like that. If you go purchase, I don't have any discount codes. Sorry about that. But these are just companies that I use and I really like. You know, if you want, I'll put the links down there and then you can shop around them, check them out, and see if they work for you. All right, we got to go on a little hike for tip number 4 on the off-grid base camp starter prep tips kit. People ask, why did you pick the Deep South, a warm place? Because look at this. You got blooms. These trees started to bloom at the end of February, and it's March right now. I mean, how cool is that? So that particular tree is actually an invasive species to this area, but still pretty. All right, tip number 4 for your prepping list for preparing for your off-grid journey is, what are you gonna do about human waste? Number 1, number 2. Number 1 is pretty easy. Number 2, sometimes it takes a little bit of thought. A couple different ways that you can do it. 1, I did not want to just be squatting around all over my woods. That is an option though, if that is something that you prefer doing. What I decided to do is go with a composting toilet, and I built a big squatty potty right here. I've got a 20-gallon garbage can that's in here, and it's got a toilet seat. If you've seen episode 1, you watched me build this, and this has been fantastic. Some people commented below on some of my videos. They were worried that when the can got full, because it's 20 gallons, that it might be really heavy. It's not heavy at all. And what I like about this system more than the 5-gallon bucket that you usually see is that, you know, I'm just by myself out here, so this lasts me a while. And 2, we've had multiple days of the upper 70s, very close to 80 degrees, and when you do this right, there's no smell when you do it right. I had people also comment, oh man, when it gets into the 70s and 80s, it's gonna stink so bad. When you have the proper ratio, the proper balance of nitrogen, which is dispelled from your body, and carbon source, like these wood shavings right here, okay, when you have that proper ratio balanced, you're not gonna have a smell. If it begins to smell, that means there's too much nitrogen and not enough carbon. But there's many different ways that you can go about a composting toilet. But when you're just starting out, I think simplicity is the best way to go. And remember, how you begin does not mean that's how you have to maintain for the rest of your life. You're gonna be making upgrades to your systems, hopefully, as time goes on. But make sure you give this one thought. And the other thing is, what are you gonna do with the waste afterwards? So for me, once these 20-gallon buckets are full, I bring them out to a far corner of my property where I tuck them away. They're out of the way, they're out of sight, they're out of mind, and they can just sit out there for months and months and months and just finish that decomposing, composting process. And over the course of about 18 months or so, I'll have good compost, good dirt, that then I can spread around like my fruit trees. I probably wouldn't use them in my vegetable raised beds. And I gotta tell you, I've been using this squatty potty for the last 2 months. I'm into my 3rd month now. And I do not miss conventional plumbing at all. In fact, I prefer this over conventional plumbing. I'm not wasting water every single time I go to the bathroom. I don't have to worry about a clog, so I don't need a plunger. I don't have to worry about the toilet ring, something going on underneath there where there's a leak that you can't see that rots your floor out, and then you got to replace all that. Had to deal with that in my previous house when I lived in Southern Illinois. I don't need to go to the store and buy all these parts when they begin to fail in a conventional toilet. This is very simple. All it is somewhere to sit and you go in the bucket. Simple and effective. And if you like, you can decorate it, paint it up, and make it look pretty, and whatever suits your needs. All right, tip number 5. The next thing that you want to think about is water, specifically your drinking and cooking water. Your showering water, the water that you're going to use to water your plants, your garden. That stuff is pretty easy. If you have a water source nearby that is clean, you can use it for bathing and watering your plants and all that stuff. But when it comes to water that you're going to be consuming, you want to make sure that you have a clean source of drinking water available. And there's a lot of ways to do this. If you're going to be using the water purification tablets, if you're going to be doing a route, something like that. For me, I use the Primo Water Company. It is not the cheapest way to get water, but I like having tap water available to drink. So 5-gallon goes inside of my 7-gallon, and this is what I use to wash my dishes. I use this water for cooking. I use this water for drinking. Any time that water is going to go into my body or have some sort of, ingestion relation with my body, I use this. Like I said, it's not the cheapest when you look at it, per gallon or per cup, but this is far cleaner than the tap water I was getting, the city tap water I was getting in my house when I lived in the Midwest. So I much rather be drinking this than even that tap water. And when it comes to good water, if you got to pay a little more, a few pennies more for a cup, then I'd rather be okay with that. Okay, don't cheap out on everything. You got to pick your battles, whether you're living off grid or on grid. And good clean water is one of the ones I'm not going to be very picky with. I'm okay with spending a little extra for some good clean water. Now for my garden and for my cleaning my body and all that, I did begin my rainwater catchment system that I'm using for those things, external uses. So good water, don't cheat out on this one. That leads us to tip number 6, which is food. What are you going to do about food? How are you going to get food? Obviously, gardening is a good way, hunting, fishing. Anytime that you can be resourceful and sustainable with your food and gather it from the land, foraging, these are ideal methods to get food. In some areas, there may be restrictions on when you can hunt, what you can hunt, how much you can hunt, or what you can fish, how much you can catch and keep. And when you're just getting started, it takes time to grow a garden and grow fruit trees that are going to produce fruit. And it may take some time and research to learn about the wild edibles that you can forage in your local area. So making sure that there's some sort of market that is somewhat nearby, whether it's a 30-minute drive, an hour drive, where you can go and gather your food supplies. But once you have your food, then you want to start thinking about how am I going to store it off grid. And most of the stuff that I'm purchasing right now to eat does not require refrigeration. But the few items that do, I've got my cooler back there, And the only pain about it is that I gotta replace ice about every 2 to 3 days in it. They do make coolers that are better than this one. I didn't need to go super big. And typically when I shop for food, I don't like shopping for more than 2, maybe 3 days at a time anyways. And as far as my dry foods, my spices, any crackers, anything like that, I have a tote that I call my pantry, where I keep everything stored away, sealed, away from wildlife. That way it's protected there. Now, the other part of food is cooking. How are you going to cook your food? Are you going to cook over the campfire, on a skillet, on a griddle, maybe in a Dutch oven? I love using my Dutch oven. That is my favorite way to cook right now in base camp. So for food, getting food, storing your food, and cooking your food, just takes thought. Keep all those things into consideration. Okay, that brings us to tip number 7, which is power source. A lot of ways you can go about power when you're just getting started off grid. And you can use a generator, like a gas generator. Nothing wrong with that. They're very, very effective. They're very loud, and they do require fuel. So you're gonna have to do some supply runs, re-get fuel, and keep your generator fueled up. Another solution is these portable battery banks, like the one I have here by Bluetti. There's a lot of great companies that make these, and these battery banks come in all different shapes and sizes, wattages. They're very, very good, and they're very effective, especially when you're out here off grid. Anytime that you are visiting maybe family or friends, you're staying at their house, you can bring this with you, plug it into their wall, and steal some of their power and get charged up. You can charge this up in your car, in the little cigarette lighter, and while you're driving into town, doing your supply runs, anything like that, you can charge it up like that. Or you can get the solar panels that are made for them, and you can charge up from the sun, which is my preferred method. So this little solar charger right here, this little battery bank, this keeps all of my electronics charged up. My phone, my laptop, my power tools, anything that I need that requires electricity, this thing takes care of it. So while you're building your off-grid home, while you're doing your construction work and all that, you want to make sure you're thinking about what is your power source and what is the most efficient way for you to get power and use power and then recharge power on your property. Do you live in a place that gets enough sun so that solar makes sense? Or maybe you want to have solar and then also have a gas backup generator just in case you run out of energy and you've got a few days or a week of clouds and rain and cold and all that fun stuff. We've made it full circle. And this brings us to the last tip, number 8, the bonus tip. And I think this is really probably the most important tip. And that is, before you get to your property, before you purchase your property, before you start buying gear, or if you already started buying gear, before you continue buying gear, the most important thing is to have a vision. What are the main reasons why you want to live this lifestyle? Why do you want to go from, city living or on-grid living to out in the country and just like you've got nothing but the dirt, the sky, the trees? What is your idea? What is your plan? Without a vision, then you don't really know what you're prepping for. So it's really hard to go through the previous 7 tips, which are going to help you to decipher what kind of tools do you need? One of the things about this lifestyle is when you're just getting started or you're prepping to get started, it's very, very easy to just start spending money. And you can end up spending a lot of money, hundreds, if not thousands of dollars on gear that you don't need. And once you get to your property, you're going to quickly find out that you're probably never going to use. And even with a vision, you're probably going to make some of those errors. At least you'll be able to make fewer of those errors, most likely. And that way you have the funds to put into what you actually need. Once you're on your property, you're gaining the experience, because very, very quickly, this lifestyle is going to help you. It's going to tell you what you need, and you're going to very quickly make a list of things that you just never even thought of in your prepping stages. But with a good vision, it doesn't need to be perfect, and you don't have to have a detailed plan written out step by step. But having a good solid vision, a good idea of what you want your off-grid lifestyle to be like, what you want it to look like, what you want it to feel like, that's going to help you make the right prepping decisions right now in the pre-beginning. And once you find your land, you purchase it, and once you get on it, that vision is going to help guide you, sync you with the nature that is around you, to make sure you're making the best decisions, especially those purchasing decisions, so that way you're hopefully not wasting a whole bunch of money on nonsense stuff, gear that you really just don't need. So have a vision. It's going to help you out immensely in the short and probably also in the long term. So you can plan out your steps and you know where you're going. And you know that base camp is probably a temporary solution right now. Because my goal on this whole living off grid is not to have to be living like it's, 3000 BC, The shed to house conversion is coming. The full bathroom with shower, everything is coming. The kitchen is coming. I've got a pretty unique route that I'm going for my kitchen. The refrigerator is coming. The laundry machine, the washer is coming. The garden and fruit tree orchards are coming. The workshop is coming. The guest cabins are coming. There's a lot of plans for my property to make it a wonderful, beautiful living experience, but also a visiting experience when I have friends and family come to visit from time to time as well. Oh, hey, hold up. I got one more really important tip for you. If you are in the most beginner stage of prepping for your off-grid lifestyle, meaning you have not purchased a property yet, and you're in the process of trying to figure out where you want to go. So this is a bonus. Totally forgot about it. Just thought about it right now. And this is something I struggled with when it came to finding the right property for me. I get asked a lot, what state am I in? Or what state is a good state to go live off grid on? And you probably really shouldn't think about it in like state to state. You really want to think about, number one, what climate do you want to be in? And then number two, you want to think about counties, not state. So if there are a few states that you're really considering because they work with your climate, then start looking at specific counties and call the zoning and planning of those counties. Don't go by your online research. Biggest mistake. Most online information about where to go live off grid is either outdated or it's just false. And a lot of that information is just people that have never been to those areas that they're talking about, and they're just regurgitating information that they're finding on the internet. I made that mistake. I was looking at a property that was actually hours away from me, and I was getting ready to sign the purchase agreement. And that morning I was supposed to meet up with the realtor to sign. I called the county zoning and planning department and very quickly learned that there were far more restrictions in that county on that land than what I wanted to deal with. I would not have been able to actually achieve my full vision and dream in that county, even though when I looked online, people were saying that's one of the great counties in this state to live off grid in. It's one of the best. Not for me, not for what I want to do. I would have had to given up a lot of pieces of my dream and of my vision if I moved to that county. And when you sign a purchase agreement and you give that earnest money, a lot of times when you decide to back out of that contract because something's not working, then you lost that money. Sometimes you can get it back and sometimes you can't. So make sure that once you have your climate in mind, you match your states and your counties to that climate. You're like, yeah, I can see myself going there. And you pick up the phone, you call zoning and planning, and you have a conversation with them and you ask them your questions and make sure that you can do all the things that you want to do on a property if you were to purchase in that area. Okay, so there you have it. That's my 7 plus 2 bonus top tips on prepping for your off-grid living adventure, wherever you want to go do it. Obviously, I highly encourage this lifestyle. Has these last 2 months been easy? Not at all. It's been a challenge. Could I have done things better? Abso-freaking-lutely. Would I go back and change anything that I've done so far? Absolutely 100% no. The last 2 months have been such an incredible experience. Ups, downs, freezing cold at night. I wouldn't change anything. So if you're new to my channel and you want to see the journey continue with all the cool, fun projects I have coming up here, be sure to hit that subscribe button. It's free. Give this video a thumbs up. And if you are living off-grid, if you are experiencing the off-grid lifestyle, not just thinking about it, not just watching YouTube videos on it, not just reading about it, but you're actually living it, help out and leave any other tips for prepping down in the comments below. You might have something to share that I didn't even think about that might even help me out too. And again, I appreciate all ideas, but I myself, because I'm a student of off-grid living and a practitioner of off-grid living, I really want to learn from those who are really going through the experience of off-grid living or have gone through the experience of off-grid living, and not just, people with the concepts, but people who have actually applied principles. All right, my friends, I'm out of here, and I'll catch you back here next time.